call the meeting to order. Welcome to the York County Board of Zoning Appeals. Our first order of business tonight is approval of the minutes from September the 12th. Anyone have any questions about the minutes? Seeing no questions, I make a motion for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. No discussion. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. No opposed. No old business. As we move on to new business, I'll give you a bit of a description of how the process plays out. When an application is called, the staff will come forward and county staff will come and make a presentation. After county staff, the applicant will have an opportunity to make their presentation. We will then open a public hearing, and anyone either for or against the application is invited to come forward and to speak. After that, we will allow the applicant to return to make any final comments. We will close the public hearing. The board will then make a motion and a second. We will have a discussion and then vote on the application. The only thing we ask is that when you come forward, that you state your name and address clearly for the record, and that you speak loudly into the microphone so that we can record and have a record of what you say. So the first applicant tonight is Matthew Howard, case Z24-10.
Good evening. I'm the residential zoning planner for York County. Move on to our first case tonight. The owner applicant are Matthew and Sarah Howard, and they own the property at 129 Twin Coves Lane. The zoning there is RMX 20. So they're requesting two variances from 155.057 for minimum lot widths on minor roads, because they are wanting to divide an existing lot, so they need two variances. So they need two 65-foot wide variances. RMX 20 has a shorter lot width than the standard 100. The parcel is 1.815 acres on the corner of Buckley Road and Twin Coves Lane. Both are privately maintained roads. There was a previous variance granted on this property for minimum lot width back in 2016. It was to divide this portion of the land from a greater parcel, about 6 acres. And then the applicant would like to further subdivide this lot to create two approximately 0.9 acre lots. Here at the zoning map, you can see it's RMX 20 there. There is a subdivision directly to the left. The RSF 40 lots are the old rec lots out on the lake. Buckley Road, Clear Cove Lane, and Twin Coves were all kind of the old rec lot access roads. Never officially adopted, kind of informal roads. This map is a little bit unclear. Twin Coves actually goes straight down to Buckley. I'll have another map that'll show it better. You can see the lot here is wooded. There are power lines that run through here, just like pretty much anywhere near the lake. And Buckley Road comes up from Bonham Road and extends out the peninsula. I did take a picture of the road from the top here. You can see there's a group mailbox, a kiosk there. And then there's a little red sign off to the side that says Private Drive, which I thought was a nice little addition to it. The woods to the left here are the open space buffer for that subdivision. This portion of Buckley Road that you see is owned by the subdivision and is given an easement across for the neighbors. They had to move the road when they built the subdivision. Here is the plat map, kind of showing you where the property lines are. You can see the Buckley along in the green space here for the subdivision, and then it goes to center line of the road, private driveway, no official easement, no official maintenance agreements. And here you can see where Twin Coves Lane actually takes off from Buckley. Clear Cove kind of dead ends right through here. The mapping is a little odd given the historic nature of the roads out there. All right, this is the exhibit from the variance from 2016. I thought it was the clearest picture showing the 1.8 acre lot versus the overall lot. You can kind of see that little bump there is an old cul-de-sac from the Duke properties. So it's an area that has been kind of adapted and kind of moving pieces out there. Okay, and this is the current proposed division. So you'd have both lots fronting on Twin Coves Lane, not Buckley. We'll go through the variance approval criteria. Extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. The subject property is accessed from the same private drive as 22 other lots. These lots range from 0.83 acres to 15 acres in size, but most of the lots are between 1.5 and 2 acres in size, similar to the subject parcel. Therefore, staff finds the proposed variance does not meet this criteria. For B, do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. Since we couldn't make a finding for A, we cannot make a finding for B, so staff finds the proposed variance does not meet this criteria. For C, conditions of the application of this chapter to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Subject property is buildable as it is. If a second home is desired, they always have the option of building an accessory dwelling unit on the property. Therefore, staff finds the proposed variance doesn't meet this criteria. And then the final criteria, D, the authorization of the variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. Currently, 23 lots, if you include the subject parcel, access the shared drive. Ultimately, they all access Buckley Road, whether or not Twin Coves, everything. There's no access agreement, shared maintenance agreements, no formal easements. Maintenance of the road is basically a pass-the-hat type situation where one of the neighbors does the maintenance but asks everybody else to pitch in for it. This is the type of process that we do not encourage in the county. It's tenuous and disputes pop up all the time. So staff finds the proposed variance does not meet this criteria. And since we couldn't meet all 4 criteria, staff recommends denial of the variance. There were 6 emails since the packet was created. Trying to find a good one to go on. Since the packet was created, that should have been supplied to you later. And they were all from the neighbors out there after they'd seen the notice. Do you have any questions for staff?
So there are 23 lots.
Yes.
And there's no formal easement.
Correct.
This sounds like a nightmare.
Yes.
So you've been out there.
Mm-hmm.
You showed us a picture, I believe that was Buckley Road.
Mm-hmm.
What about Twin Coves? What's the condition of the road?
It's narrower. This is the part that was moved from the subdivision being built. So this is a newer grading access of the road. As you go farther out, it turns more into dirt road driveways.
So from 2016, we've gone from 6.1 acres to 1.8 acres to now the proposed 0.9 acres.
Correct.
And the proposed lot size does fit the zoning classification though, doesn't it?
Correct. RMX 20 allows for a 20,000 square foot lot, just under a half acre. They would still have to get septic permits before we could approve the division.
Anyone have any questions for staff? Thank you. Is the applicant present?
Yes, sir. Esteemed members, my name is Matthew Howard. I am the applicant and the owner of the current lot.
Address?
The lot address is 129 Twin Coves Lane.
Your address? Your current residence?
1011 Valley Forge Road, also in Lake Wiley, 29710.
No, thank you.
Sorry, I don't have a presentation, didn't know that I could bring pictures, but see the proposed division. We purchased this parcel in 2020. We have been planning on building a dwelling there, single-family home, not splitting the land. We were approached by a local homeowner who also has family in this area that live off of Twin Coves, with the propose of splitting this land and selling to this person so that they could build a single-family home that would match the neighborhood. On the application, it did specify this, that if this were to be split into two parcels, both parcels would have single-family dwellings on them. We did have a perk test done on the full acreage, a 1.8, and there was no problem with that. We do believe that we have talked with other architects, building architects, and saying they are confident that there will not be a problem with septic for two dwellings on this. As far as the accessory building, we do not want to own the other home, so it would need to be owned by somebody else, and thus splitting the property made sense. I believe that's all I have to say. Is there any questions, please?
So when you purchased the property, it was your intention then to build on the full lot and to live there?
That is correct.
This is just something that's come up since you purchased the property?
That is correct. We made the decision to split the property to help out a member of the community being closer to her family.
Any questions for the applicant?
Did you say that both properties, if you split it up, would get a septic tank approval on both of them?
We're confident in that, yes, sir.
I believe he said a perk test was done on the 1.8 acres.
Yeah, but-
But not on each side.
Right, that's what he's saying.
Yes, ma'am, that's
But
correct.
he's confident that it will.
So you purchased the original 6.12 acres?
No, sir, that was split or subdivided in 2016
Mhm.
by Mr. William Clark,
Okay,
and intent to sell to his son, and his son sold to us.
okay.
And
So
his-
you purchased the 1.815,
Yes, sir.
okay.
This may be more a question for staff, but just notice that it says Buckley Road, 66-foot public right-of-way.
That's leftover from, basically people were copying off previous plats, and there was no checking done of the history of it. But once we went back through the plats with our mapping department, we were able to find that there was no dedicated right-of-way. It was just labeled that on some plats.
Okay, that's actually incorrect then. Okay. Any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone present that wishes to speak for or against the application?
My name is Valerie Hare. My husband and I live at 3522 Aqua Point Drive in Hansmill. I am actually the person who is interested in purchasing half of the lot from Mr. Howard and his wife. My daughter, my son-in-law, and my two grandchildren live at the end of Twin Coves. We have been looking to get out of the subdivision, move closer to them, so as we age, we have somebody who could help us if needed. Found out he had a 2-acre lot. approached him about, would they be interested in subdividing if it was possible. We're interested in building a average size, one-story home. I think he's probably about the same. Not a huge house, not a small house. Will give us access to our daughter who's on the water, so we can use her property on the water. I know there's been discussion whether it's Buckley or Twin Coves. I don't care where we come from. I'll do either if that will make somebody happy. I've spoken with Allison Love. Allison Love is actually a neighbor of the property. She is in favor of it. She said it meets the requirements for building. She doesn't have a problem with it. We'd actually be a neighbor with her. I don't know what else to tell you if anybody has questions about what we're interested in.
Any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name is Hope Root, and I'm here tonight with my husband, John Fultz, and we own the property that is the 4 acres of the 6. So we own the property.
Did you give your address?
My apologies, 175 Twin Coves Lane
Thank
in
you.
Lake Wiley. So we bought this property about 6 years ago, and we bought it as our retirement home. I haven't quite retired yet, but I'm almost there. When we bought the property, we asked about the 2 acres, and Mr. Clark assured us that he had subdivided the property he owned. So he said, I had 6 acres, I sold the 2, and it cannot be further subdivided. He also showed us a picture of the house that was going to be built there. It was a real consideration for us, since these properties would run right up against ours. And what we were looking for, of course, was sort of a wooded area, more secluded area. We also left a very busy subdivision in Charlotte where we had lived for 23 years. And so when the property came up for sale, we actually considered making an offer on it. Hindsight is always 20/20. But we felt reassured because we did check in with the zoning office, and they said it cannot be further subdivided. So we thought, that's fine. We can live with one house. We knew there was going to be one house there when we bought the property. But now it's changing on something we thought couldn't be done. 2 houses are 2 septic tanks and 2 wells. So we have a well as well downhill from these properties. It's hard to come here tonight because we're sitting here with our future neighbors, and we don't want to make enemies. We would love for Ms. Hale, I think. Hare.
My daughter's Julie Hall.
Right, Ms. Hare, to live near her daughter. We think that would be fantastic. We like her daughter and son-in-law very much, but we also want our voices to be heard. So we did send a lengthy email. I hope you've gotten that and had an opportunity to study it with our concerns. I wish I had the foresight to bring a picture of Twin Coves. It is much narrower than Buckley. It is not maintained by anyone except my husband. He maintains that road. So you have 2 construction times now. You have 2 massive trucks going on that very small road, and now 2 driveways on that very short road. That's a lot of our concern. That road does run through our property as it does through this property, a corner of that property, but it does run right across. And there would just be a lot more construction. Again, we would love for Ms. Hare to have that property, but this is a subdivision of a previous subdivision. And it isn't just what we had in mind, but what our neighbors also had in mind. We believe, I think that they have sent in some emails as well. to keep the character of the lots as we were all promised. So does anyone have any questions for me?
This might be a question for staff, but would it be possible for them to create an access easement agreement?
It's possible. It would require the 23, 24 property owners to work together.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Foltz. I live at 175 Twin Coves Lane, and I'm married to Hope Root. I just want to touch on a few other points in our email that weren't specifically covered. One is if you look at the lots in our neighborhood, so kind of that panhandle is our neighborhood down Buckley Road. And you can see that all the lots are large lakefront lots. There are no interior homes at this point. There is, and that's how it was designed. After the design and creation of the community, the current owner of the prior owner of 175's created this 129 interior lot for his son with a plan to build a stone house. So you can see that, you know, this lot's already inconsistent with the neighborhood, but having two small interior lots there will be very inconsistent and just a different nature of the privacy and the wooded access to these lots. So I just wanted to point that out. Allison Love lives in the other community, and it's a completely different situation. So she's not part of the community, doesn't use the private road. So that's the first point. It's inconsistent with the general nature of the lots in the community. Second point I wanted to make is that not only, you know, if we subdivide this, then there's going to be 2 homes built and clearing there. And this lot is in the scenic overlay of the Lake Wylie district, zoning overlay district. So that Lake Wylie scenic overlay is intended to protect the nature and the beauty of the area. And substantial tree clearing will be inconsistent with that. My wife covered point 3 thoroughly. Point 4, the staff covered that we do voluntary contributions for road maintenance and for road supplies. The current owner of 129 has not consistently contributed, maybe because they don't live there and don't think and aren't current road users, but there is no, you know, we have no way of forcing contribution. It's just up to the current homeowners. Health concerns, we are concerned about, while they may perk, you know, you're going to have a well and a septic field on both of these lots uphill from our well, so we're concerned about that. We're concerned about road safety issues. If this lot, so this is, this area, the comprehensive plan designation is LDRES. And so while this lot is an RMX 20, it's more appropriately described as RSF 30. Okay, and if it were RSF 30, single family, as opposed to mixed use, right, then you would need 100 feet of road frontage, not 65. Asking for that variance is kind of beyond the nature of the lots in the community. And then finally, from a road safety perspective, if this were on a private road, they wouldn't have enough distance for 2 driveways within that period of time, or within that area. The first driveway will have to be very close to the intersection. And then the second driveway would be relatively close to that. So we're a little bit concerned about safety issues. My understanding, don't know if this is right or not, but the way this map, I don't think is correct. I don't think the lot 129 comes across Twin Coves Road completely. And I was told that there would need to be a variance obtained from lot owner, from the lot across Twin Coves for a driveway onto Buckley. I'm sorry, for a driveway onto Twin Coves. A driveway onto Buckley would probably be even more dangerous because people fly down that road. It's a private road, and no enforced speed limit. And it's wooded, so there's very limited sight lines on Buckley Road. So, any questions for me?
Do you know how wide those roads are? Buckley and Twin Coves? Any idea?
I would guess they're 30 feet wide.
Any more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else present that wishes to speak for or against the application? Seeing none, does the applicant care to return?
Thank you. Again, Matthew Howard, 1011 Valley Forge, Lake Wiley, South Carolina. I am the applicant, and I do want to mention I did not have any information about any emails that you guys were presented from other neighbors in this community, so I'm ill prepared. I apologize for that in advance. However, from some of the points that were made, this is a survey we had done by Huck's Survey Service from out of Lake Wiley, or out of Rock Hill. If you see Twin Cove, the road does cross over officially into this parcel, into the 1.815 acreage, completely in that back corner. Additionally, you'll see that there's 121 feet if split in half against the Twin Cove side. Plenty of room for driveway away from the corner. However, that being said, the new tenant for the split has agreed to go off of Buckley or Twin Cove, whatever fits. Other concerns, other questions. The accusation that we have not contributed to the road maintenance, even though we have not lived in this neighborhood, every time we have been asked to contribute to the maintenance of the road, and again, this goes back to, there's no easements, it's all community-based, right? We have contributed. The only time we have not contributed is, right now there's an active request for some monetary value for an emergency gravel delivery and dispensing, and we have not. Yes, there are 4 left. There are 4 openings left, and we have considered, I was hoping to
We can't hear you if you don't face the microphone.
Apologies, I was addressing the neighbors, say I was hoping to see Jack tonight to give him money for that. So we have contributed where we were asked, even though we do not utilize the road, and we have not, maybe twice a year since 2020. We are trying to be positive impacts on the community. That's what we try to teach our kids. We will move in with 2 kids. We're trying to find space for them. So this is why we bought the lot. we bought over, like way too much space. And if we can help somebody else in the community, that's what we're open for. So, all that being said, I appreciate your consideration of this variance.
Any questions? Thank you. Okay, the floor is open for a motion.
I make a motion to deny the variance as requested.
And I'll second.
I think what it comes down to is the state law is very particular about what guidelines we have to grant a variance, and based on the facts that were presented, you know, the zoning ordinance is not preventing the use of this property or the utilization in any way. It's buildable. A single-family home can go on it now as it is. So I think just based on that, you know, it has to meet all 4 findings, and I do not believe that it meets that one specifically.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. Any opposed? The motion passes. Next application is Benjamin Bolding, case Z 24-9.
And, case 24, Z24 9B, the owner applicant, I believe, Luke Golden, at the Windsor Cove address. It's got some overlays on it with RMX 20 and Lake Wiley overlay and scenic overlay. And they're looking for a variance to the location of accessory structures in this district are required to be located at or behind the front building line of the principal structure. Kind of a summary, again, asking an accessory structure go in front of the primary house. Property was constructed in 2018 on almost 2 acres. House is approximately 5,000 gross and 3,700 square feet of living area with a 753 square foot garage. And the applicant proposes to construct a 1,980 square foot garage, approximately 126 feet in front of the existing home. And the lot is similar to the neighbors, as you can see. This is our zoning map, lots outlined. An aerial view of the lot. Got some pictures that kind of show you the layout of the house, one of the neighbor's house. In the bottom, see, it's sort of the approximate property lines. I believe that the property line is just, the driveway is really close. Here's a proposed site plan that they put in, the garage in front of the house. Again, this one, we have the 4 findings that we need to make to be able to prove this and to go over extraordinary and exceptional conditions. Pertaining to the particular property, again, we have about a 2-acre lot, a house outside of the buffer, a little slope towards the lake. The lot configuration is typical of that within a development, within a subdivision. Didn't see anything extraordinary or exceptional about the property itself. And we find the conditions generally do not apply to other properties in the vicinity, but similar to the line of properties sharing that side of the cove. Find it doesn't meet that And then again, we need to look to see if this would effectively prohibit them or unreasonably restrict utilization of the property. There is some room, I believe, to locate a garage. I don't know if we can get 2,000 square foot garage there, side. But it's well developed with a good sized house, garage attached to the house. We wouldn't find it would be unreasonable, unreasonably restricted. Very. Again, we need to look at the authorization of variance and not that'd be a substantial detriment to adjacent property or the public good or character of the district would not be harmed. Property does have a good sized wooded area in the proposed structure with shielded view, however, noting a large detached garage in front of the house would be out of character with the area. We looked at surrounding properties, find that to be common, found in a nearby area, didn't find it, didn't meet all four of the criteria, so we recommend denial. We did get an email that I got copied on, and it was a little bit late and we didn't get it into your packet, but we did receive one from Kevin Brindley at 2753 Windswept, and he said he wasn't able to make it here tonight because of work commitment, but basically he's sending 3 concerns about the variance discussion, and he was concerned that it might set a precedence for others in the neighborhood to do the same. And then one's kind of a question is proposed additional garage building needed due to the neighborhood providing a storage yard across the street? Apparently there's a place where you put your boats across the street.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
It says, is the proposed additional garage building needed due to the neighborhood providing a storage yard across the street? So if you see, okay, well, anyway, up to the right, you see that lot, there's like a kind of like a parking area, I guess. Maybe that's where the boat storage is at. It doesn't make a definitive statement. And then it questions, does the existence of or usage and activities related to the proposed additional garage in any way conflict or break with the established HOA covenants, articles, guidelines? And that's not for the county to review. You may look at a use, but I can't give you information.
So can you go, can you go back to your analysis, the third point? Back one, yeah. So in your analysis, you say that they have the option to locate the garage on the side of the existing house without the need for a variance. Can you go back to the map and kind of, I would say, to the overhead?
Yeah, I don't know. There's the picture on top shows you, you know, the property on top there is their
Is that,
house.
to me, the lot looked so narrow that beside the house did not look like an option, but when you wrote that in the analysis, I'm just wondering, is there something I'm not seeing?
No,
I
just,
think
you
if
see
you go
the
one more,
large
you could get
pad
a
out
better
there
looking
in
map
front
at
of
the
the,
next slide, I think.
in front of the large pad in front of the garage has some space and continues to the property line. There's room there. Not that it would be a simple thing, or like I said, I don't know if you can get a 2,000 square foot garage unless you rework the garage there and incorporate it into the side of the structure.
And one thing real quick, it's not, and Rick and I talked about this, the lot is not as narrow as we would think. I think it's just because it's so long that your brain just kind of wants to go there, but it's by no means a narrow lot. It exceeds the lot width.
So can you show on this map where you would propose that it be beside the house?
Where the foundation is below, on the lower side of that.
If they put it beside the house, what would the setback requirement be for the detached garage?
10, yeah, that's what I'm guessing.
10 feet
So they would just have to make a smaller detached garage, most likely.
Yeah, and there's a number on there, I don't know if I can read it from there, that shows how far the
It's like
house is
56
away
feet.
from
Yeah,
the.
56.
Can you go
56,
back
It's
to,
56 feet away
to
from.
the last slide? No, yeah, that one. Two of my papers have the proposed garage in two places, and then the top picture there has a pin in another place. So I'm confused on,
The pin's just an archive from the program, that means nothing.
okay, well,
It's just
if you
showing
look
you
at
where the
the
last.
tree there, that's next to the woods, that's what this picture shows, and it says proposed.
Okay. I was going off the applications the applicant put in that got turned down because the garage was in front of the house. So that's what we had on file, but, you know, in general, anything in front of the house regardless would require a variance.
Are you sure he's got room to put it?
I don't, honestly, you could put something there, I don't know if you could put this there.
How big
So
is
you-
the building? It's probably got it
It's
on.
rather large, it's 2,000 square feet,
35?
it's
So he's looking at,
substantial.
it's on page 35. So
Oh.
52 by, what is it, 40?
There's no way that's
It's not
gonna fit
have to
there.
downsize.
But if you look as an example, the neighbors have a garage, the neighbors have a
40 by
garage that
50.
swings out
52
from
by
the
40.
house.
Yeah.
and-
But,
But
well, there's no way that'll fit beside the house. Because there's only 56 feet between the house and the property line, and the building's 52 feet. I mean, I guess it could make it smaller, but I don't know.
Any questions for staff?
Yeah, I guess I have a question too, is, you know, and I looked at this, you know, on Google Maps at home and stuff and looked around at it and everything else. You know, I saw another house that had, you know, a secondary building, I think it was for a pool house. It seemed fairly large for a pool house, but looked like it might have been. I don't see that there's some other ones with, some don't even have enough area for this. So I guess the question is that, is there a reason for not ever having this, I guess, approved for anybody else? Did they ever get denied this ever before? Is this the first time this has come up?
no, some have been denied and some have been accepted. It's an unusual piece of code, but it is the code. You know, when you go through the four, the you know, criteria that you look at,
Sure.
you know, this is where I arrive. You know, in the future, there may be some consideration for what we're really trying to accomplish with the code. Saying
Okay, you
nothing
see-
can be in front of the house, but that's the
Sure.
way it is.
You say some have been approved, some have been denied. I mean, you've approved other ones to have an outbuilding. I mean, it sounds like you're not opposed to having a detached garage, you just don't like the location.
I just don't like that I can't make good criteria to support the application.
So,
You know,
Again,
it has to
I
be
think-
extraordinary, and I didn't see that.
yeah, again, I don't think, from what I'm hearing, you know, there's really no way to put this building beside the house, and I think it would be more unsightly there, to be honest with you. It doesn't really look like it would.
Yeah, I mean, you could talk to a contractor. I'm sure it
Sure.
would not be, you know, might be expensive, it might be difficult.
Sure,
but
they could
there
probably
are
work
things
with
you
it.
could do.
You can construct anything, I agree. Yeah, so I guess in this, you know, one of these that I read, you know, it doesn't conform with the rest of the lots. Again, I didn't see any in the, you know, the two roads right around it, but I've seen lots of houses with a very beautiful structure that's out there that actually probably increases the value. Let me ask one question about this. When I was looking at this, most of these homes, it looks like the front, or the back is, can you see this from the lake pretty well? These homes along here? Because usually you're looking at these homes from the lake as opposed to anywhere else. I took Google Maps and went up and down all along this road, and I really can't see any of the houses, to be honest with you. I could see that there is this storage piece out here. I mean, if I was gonna look at this, I would think that would look more unsightly than a building that would be nice looking. So I'm just curious from these four criteria, I was just curious, you know, how how that doesn't fit in there.
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't have any thing to do with how I feel about the structure itself. It's for,
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
making
No,
making a
Well,
legitimate
that's what I'm
finding.
asking,
I
has there
couldn't
been,
do
has there
that.
been other ones outside of these couple roads here that encompass their community that maybe I didn't see?
It's-
Are there other buildings, outbuildings, or secondary, you know, garages, if you will, that were detached, that are on other roads that I wasn't looking at? So there are
Well,
some
I mean,
approved.
throughout the
you said.
whole Lake Wiley area, which is quite large, I'm
Sure.
sure there is some somewhere. There's
Yeah.
some been denied, there are different types of issues with lots and housing,
All right, well,
you know, different thoughts going on.
let me clarify, my apologies, maybe I didn't say the question quite right. So I know there's, Lake Wiley encompasses an awful lot, right?
Mhm.
But on here, it says, you know, similar lots and everything else, it doesn't conform to the rest. So I'm trying to ideally,
I don't see any in this picture. You know, I mean, this particular area.
sure, I'm just saying in general, if I were to zoom out farther than this and I didn't go down other roads, I just know, I see a lot of detached garages. I was just curious how you came to.
We looked
I think
in,
the key-
we did a Google drive-by as well and did an overview of it. Rick and I, we sat in my office when he was working on this,
Mhm.
and we found one. And I think it was, I can't remember if it was up Windswept Cove a little bit more, but we found one like detached
Okay.
garage. We looked, you know, because we have to make the findings and see what's in the area
Sure.
and that sort of thing. So that did play into our analysis.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the key is the ending of the second point where it says to apply to other property in the vicinity. So, yeah, I mean, you're correct, the lake covers a huge area of the county.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, you can't really count the whole lake as vicinity, right?
That's why
And
I was
I guess that's somewhat subjective as to what you consider the vicinity to be, but, you know, I guess I would say it's more or less the area we see in the map. The, you know, neighboring homes up to maybe 6 to 10 homes away and that kind of area is what I would call vicinity, but like you say, that's subjective to different people's opinions of what vicinity might be. Any more questions for staff?
For the usage of this, is it only for just dry storage, or do you anticipate putting in, you know, utilities or bathhouse or anything, or anything that's gonna
Wanna-
impact
you
your
wanna
septic, or, I don't know. I didn't see any notes on that. I saw your HOA approved it, but I didn't see if there was, are you gonna tap into any utilities? Is there any plans for that?
Maybe we could
Sure,
ask
with me,
the
I'll let-
applicant that when they come.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know if you knew of that. Apologies.
Hello, Benjamin Luke Bolding, resident of 2737 Windswept Cove. Thank you for your time, thank you for your service, and thank you staff for your review as well. To answer your question, yes, ma'am, it is mostly for dry storage. I try to write down a lot of the points, so hopefully I cover them all. We will have power, I would like to have water there. We have 2 young kids, we're trying to get them into cars. We do have some boats, and we'd like to store the boats in the garages, the intent is, to be honest with you, for boat storage. We do have a storage lot. I think it's had 4 unsolved break-ins in the last 2 years. A trailer's been stole, a rifle's been stole, a Cadillac converter's been cut and stole, but there is a storage lot in that community. But it's just, people will continue to go in there and steal stuff. So I have my boats in there, but I try not to store them there just because of the 4 unsolved thefts within the last 2 years. Kevin Brinkley, I think, was the gentleman who wrote an email. So we have, I want to say, roughly 100 people in our HOA, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's 100. Kevin was our neighbor. We had a lot between us and Kevin that was sold, and now somebody has built there. Kevin's a super nice guy, but he's somewhat particular. I find it interesting because he does have a building in his front yard. Maybe he doesn't have it permitted or didn't get his own, but he does have a structure in his front yard. And it's also protected by the woods. I pulled it up on the map, we can probably see it, but we're not here to get his building approved, we're here to get ours hopefully approved. But we are proposing to build the structure beside the woods, not beside the home. We believe it's unbuildable beside the home. I was trying to pull up the topography map of our lot. It drops off about 15 feet to their neighbor's lot as soon as you get past the concrete. So if you're going to build anything, you probably got a 4-footer or a stem wall, you probably got to be at least, I don't know, 5, 10 feet within that concrete pad to even get a stem wall, then you're right up on the house. So then you're limited to an outbuilding if you, in my opinion, beside the house. I don't know if you can pull up topography before I finish, but I think if you pull it up, you'll see that drop. The backyard, of course, slopes to the lake. It drops off pretty aggressive, as most houses do on the lake. I wrote down a point, houses in the neighborhood. There are a couple of houses in the neighborhood that have visible garages from the road. You know, ours will be not visible. I think if you look at the top view of it, there's a good view here, you'll see we're proposing to build it beside the woods there. We don't want to take any of the woods away. We prefer to keep the woods. I'm not sure if all pages of the application are in here. I have some printouts, if I can approach and give those to you, but maybe you have those in the package already. But it's the last page of the printout. Okay, I think you guys got it. So if you look at that last page, and for those who maybe drove by and put the sign, you probably can speak to as well as I can, you can't see our proposed building site from the road. You just can't see it. There's too much evergreens there. I think the picture, if you look at the top, that picture, you see the hardwoods, they don't have leaves on them. So this was taken in the winter time, so that's the worst possible time for visibility as far as not being able to see the structure. And you will not be able to see the structure from the road, winter or summer. We do have an HOA, so, you know, when we started thinking about, the wife actually asked to build a garage. So when she asked to build the garage, I was like, there's no way we could, you know, build a garage without an HOA. So we talked to HOA and said, hey guys, we're thinking about building a garage. Where do you guys want us to put it? You know, we don't want to submit something. So we worked closely with them, and they said, well, we prefer you to put it the top of your property beside the woods. They don't want to put it beside the lake, right? I don't think anybody who lives on the lake wants it beside the lake. I think most of us consider that to be our front yard, is the lake side. It is visible, home is visible from the lake side, so we don't want to put it there. HOA doesn't want us to put it there. HOA has asked us to put it where we have requested to put it as well. So I'm not asking on just my behalf, but also the HOA's behalf. We feel that it is unbuildable beside the house. I think your other possibility is in front of the house, between the house and the lake. Well, I say that in front, I guess behind the house. I don't want to build it there. I don't think the HOA wants to build it there. I don't think the community or the council wants to build it there either, to be honest with you. The other points that I got hit on, the wife did take pictures of the 2 garages in the neighborhood that's actually in our neighborhood, that's, you know, just right down the road from us. We can share those. I'm not sure how I'd cast those on this screen, but she has them on her cell phone if you guys would like to see them. But they're large structures. One is detached. I'd question it's kind of in front beside his house, but he's got a wider lot, shorter lot. The other one is attached with a walkway. So I think that's why he doesn't have to have a variance, but he's got a very large 3-bay garage with an RV storage in it as well in our neighborhood. Again, you won't be able to see our garage from the road. The only time you'll be able to see our garage is if you come down I call it the drag strips, because those 2 driveways are so close together. I wish that was the zoning requirement. You could not have a driveway within 20 feet of another driveway, but they are close together, but the only way you'd see the garage is if you came down the driveway. Trying to think if there's any other points I did not hit on. Any other questions for me? Anything that I might not have hit on?
If you can go to the picture that you can see the lake as well, right there.
Yep.
Above yours to the left, 2 houses up on the left. What's that? It looked like a garage to me, that one with the red roof on it.
Do I have a pointer on here? Is there a pointer?
I do not know. Should, I would assume.
Across the
Yeah,
lake?
so across the lake part, it's 2 houses up on the left. It shows a garage, one of the ones I wanted to ask, just because I don't know if anybody knows what that is. It looked like an external garage to me, the size of it.
I think it's like a pre-built partial building, you know, that you have delivered and they just drop it off. I don't think it's a stick-built on-site garage.
Okay,
Um,
well, still, I would assume.
Yeah.
That-
Doug, I'm sorry.
I don't think that would need a variance, so that is technically in front of the house. Am I correct?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That would not require
Yeah.
a variance.
Gotcha.
I think the ones I'm referring to is if you pass that out structure beside the pool, the two down here on the bottom left, I'm not sure if I can, you won't see them on that map either. Too far. Sorry.
Presentation, there you
Yeah, I don't think it's on here, but the other two are down there. The ones I'm referring to. And there is a out partial, as soon as you come into Windswept Cove on the right, I think that one might be in front, but it might be questionable on the corner for those who drove down that area. But again, the structure we're talking about building, it won't be visible, and I think that's the intent of the code, right, is so you don't build an unsightly metal building visible from the road. The building that we're presenting is in keeping with the neighborhood. It meets all the requirements of the HOA. I think the HOA wrote a letter and sent it in as well, asking for the structure to be built in the same location. That was, I think, one of the requirements for us to have a variance request, is for the variance to be approved and asked for by the HOA as well. So that was sent in with the package.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura Bolding, 2737 Windswept Cove, his wife. Thanks for listening tonight. And I think the only things I wanted to add or reiterate to is we had pre-approval from our HOA to make sure that they were good with what we were proposing and that it was in keeping with the neighborhood. They require us to build the building similar to style to our house, so they match. So they would even look like a house. I guess if you could see it from the street, it doesn't look, it's not looking like a outbuilding or some kind of auxiliary structure. And we don't have the garage doors facing the road. That is one covenant that we do have in our neighborhood. And I disagree. I don't think there's any room on the side of the house to put it. I can say that because if you look at the little brown area, that is a really steep slope. I actually planted plants and put mulch down so I didn't have to mow it anymore because it was so hard to mow. So that whole space going down to our neighbors is really steep. So I wouldn't want a garage on that side either. It would block our lake view because we have a really nice lake view out of the side windows of the home. So that would be prohibitive to our enjoyment of our lot. And that light brown area is where we had to sod because it is a slope to get the grass stabilization there. So when we look at our house, we're actually looking at our yard. You don't really, you have to kind of look up to see where the building's gonna be. So it's kind of it doesn't pose any obstruction for the view from the front of the home as far as I'm concerned. And you can also see that we frequently park on the hill in this picture. My truck's on the hill. So it would be nice to have that area, having the two children driving now, having extra parking. Only other thing, let me go back. Sorry. Wrong way. So the lot configuration or typical, to be honest, I don't really understand some of this stuff, but I just brought some pictures if I can approach and show y'all of the end of the cul-de-sac, some of the houses that have garages They're actually both have RV garages, and that's what we're intending, is to have a storage, because I'd like to get an RV myself one day. Would you all like to see? This is one, and they're both lake lots as well.
And this is the end of your road?
In our road, correct.
And this is beside your house, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which house is it on here? I'm just curious.
You have to go down farther.
Oh, okay, a little
So
bit.
it's not
I
on
got
the
you,
map,
I got you.
Unfortunately.
That's fine. You can pass it down.
So this is that one.
Two at a time, maybe?
Yeah. What are we looking at?
This is our neighbor at the end of the cul-de-sac, detached garage,
Beside the house.
beside the house, yes. It kind, I mean, depending on how you look at the cul-de-sac, you can say it's more in the road than, I guess it's hard to see in this picture, but yes.
Based on that picture, do you think that lot is more side yard than yours?
Looks like,
Like, I guess I should go back here. Yes, that one had, like, right behind both structures, the lake is right behind them, so there's nowhere for them, there was nowhere else for them to put their garage, pretty much. It had to be there. And then the other house, kind of a similar situation where, they have a pool, their house, and then there's a little, because it's a cul-de-sac, their yard juts up this way to like a, what's that road called? Community-owned road, I can't remember the terminology, where the cul-de-sac ends, but there's a road to more houses, but their yard juts up into that road. So their garage is house, pool, garage, cul-de-sac. And I'll try to find that picture real quick and show you as well. And I think everyone did a great job of how they're building it.
What am I looking at here? This is his with the,
Garage, and they actually were able to do a breezeway, I guess, to attach it to their house.
this is essentially in front of their house too.
Mhm.
So from our perspective, we're kind of in keeping with the street that we live on. And many of our neighbors have RVs and large things that they like to store privately. As my husband mentioned, the storage lot has been a concern. And more ongoing concern, they've sold the property behind the storage lot that they're supposed to build a subdivision. So we're gonna have a lot more people coming in, and we have a gravel road that goes next to it that gets questionable traffic sometimes. So all that being said, we'd like to have something nice that we can keep our things safe and secure in our property. So thank you again for your time. Any questions for me?
Thank you. Anyone present that wish to speak for or against the application? Seeing none, does the applicant care to return? Anything to add?
Thank you again for your consideration, your time, and your service. I think the intent of the zoning is so that you don't build unsightly structures from the road. And again, we're building that behind the wooded area, so that we're hopefully meeting the full intent of the zoning requirements. So it's behind the woods. And if we need to keep the woods or write that in, we're happy to keep the woods. We like the woods and we want to keep our privacy, so the woods is part of it for us. Thank you for your time.
I had an odd question for staff, something that just crossed my mind. If a property owner say these folks owned that piece of property, and it didn't have a house on it. And they built this building on that piece of property. It would not need a variance. They could build this building where they want on that property. And then come back 2 years later and they could build that house on that property where it currently is and not need a variance or anything. It's just a change in order. Now the house exists, they need a variance to build the detached structure, but if the structure exists, they could build the house and there wouldn't be any.
You need a principal use, which would be a house, if they couldn't build a structure if it wasn't a dwelling first. You can't do that. You'd have to build a dwelling.
He's saying you can't go,
You
The
can't
other
build a
way.
building on a piece of property if there's not a house on it.
No.
that's what he said.
Not unless it's maybe an agricultural building in ag land or something like that, but for a residential district, you have to have a principal use, and a garage is not a principal, it'd have to be associated with a dwelling. It'd be an accessory structure, so you have to have a structure to associate it with.
News to me. Was not aware of that.
Was not aware of that either. I have a question too. I mean, you know, with the Lake Wiley, you know, all the places around here, right? I'm looking at this picture. I don't know if you can see where you can see everything. I don't know if somebody wants to flip back to it. You know, when you look at, oh, you have to do it. And this is, I guess, kind of for zoning. You know, go one more. Yeah. So when you look at this, you know, when people were building lots or buildings on these lots, right? I see quite a variance of where the house is in relationship to if it's closer to the road or if it's closer to the water, right? And based on, you know, these types of lots that you see in there, and again, for me, just doing Google Maps going up and down the road, you can't even see into the lots, most of them. So I couldn't tell you if the house is close to the road or close to the water. But, you know, based on these, you know, I assume the variance is not needed for people that are closer to the road and they put it behind their house. Is this correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you know, I'm just kind of curious if this was ever a thing or these people knew going into this even. So, all right. Maybe it was on the books, but just kind of unknown. And that somebody can have, again, do you know anything about the zone part of that house that's up there that has evidently a manufactured piece that was drug into it? It's every bit as size of a large garage that's sitting on that
I mean,
lot.
the red one there, the one that you were talking about, that wouldn't need a variance.
Oh, because it's not
it
in
is-
front of the house to the road.
Yes,
Okay.
it is at or behind
All
the
right.
front building line
Sure.
of the house. And the reason for that section of the code, I think the intent was to preserve views and to ensure that folks were not building these just massive structures. Because I think that did happen. A few times. So I think that's what that section of the code is trying to guard against.
Sure.
When you reference protected views, is that from the lake side or from the road side?
Well, I mean, the way that the code looks at it is the front is where the road is. It's not the lake. And so, I mean, this property or this area wouldn't be a really great example because all the houses are, you know, pretty close to the lake and or as close as you can get with staying out of the 50-foot, without staying out of the 50-foot buffer. But, so I guess, for example, if they put their structure in and the neighboring house above them, if their house were up closer to the road, then that structure may block their view. Just hypothetically, that's sort of what it was trying to combat.
Well, I guess what I would ask about their particular, because I did look on Google Maps, and some of them, when you do look from, because Google Maps shows you from the road to the house, some of them, if you're looking at the property, you really only see like roof lines. because as you go in, the properties drop. So let's just say, I don't know, and I did look at yours, but I cannot remember what it looked like. I know the trees were there, and I think part of your slopes, so you're looking at a lot of roof line. So I guess I'm thinking if that structure where they're proposing to put it, you have the trees, and if that structure is sitting behind the trees, you're really only gonna see roof line again, because you barely can see the house, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right, yes, sir. So those trees are actually on the peak of the property. So if you're looking from the road, you can't even see our house at all from the road. It's invisible from the road. And those trees, I want to say, they're mature trees, a lot of them are, and then you got some undergrowth as well. Even with that structure there, the trees can be well above the structure itself. That peak is about in the middle of the woods, and then it starts sloping off towards the lake as you'd expect it to. And so there's a few feet drop before we get to the building pad. We just didn't want to clear any of the trees, but I think it's a nice thing for us too, because it is downgrade of the trees as well.
So here's what I will say, and I think we need to, I think this needs to be brought back to the variance in the issue at hand, which is the 4 criteria. You know, we can go back and forth about, you know, that section of the code for what it requires, but the bottom line is does it meet those 4 criteria? And I think we need to come back and focus on that.
I would agree. The intent of the code was not for this board. It's those 4 criteria, so. The
That's
floor is open. We need a motion.
I'd like to have a motion, maybe popular or not. I would like to make a motion to approve the variance.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Yeah, so for me, you know, and exactly what you said, I agree that what you said feeds right into here. So I think where it says does not meet in a couple of these is incorrect in my interpretation of this. Because this particular property, you know, it's similar to other lots, and it is unique. Each one of these lots are unique, right? So you have to base that on that. And I think that's what the HOA is looking at too. And even to your thought and other people saying it, the HOA looked at this, worked with them, explained to them where they would like it to be, which is actually outside of what the zoning wants them to have it at, right? They want to have that in a spot where it does look good, and it is particular. And I know that most of the times when there's a secondary building and it's by itself, they want it to look like the house, right? They want it to look uniform, which I think they've already got to that point where they've got that set up. The variances here in these particular 4 sections, I think it does meet the issues personally. I believe that this is a specific piece. It's not just that it you know, would look nice there, but it also meets, I think, these criteria. You have to look through these criteria as is there a condition or variance that it meets, right? So there's one on here that says, you know, variance, that one meets it, I guess, D did, sorry. But the rest of them, I think it does meet that criteria personally. So my intention, yeah. So that's my feeling. I mean, I could go into it a little bit more on how much we want to go through this, but I think the variance is needed. I think with the HOA already approving it, I think it falls in line.
I would say one point you did make that I think it's hard to agree with when you say it's not unique. Well, you said it's unique.
They're all
Maybe
unique in
from the
their own.
rest of the world, but when you look at the other properties around it, can you look at their property and say it's unique from every one of these in the vicinity? To the point, the neighbor next door, that wouldn't apply to them.
Oh, I
Or
agree.
across the street,
Sure.
that wouldn't apply to
Sure.
them.
I think
In this case, it does, because they're all very similar.
they are very similar in that way. You're right.
But
I
that
agree.
takes unique out.
But, well, and the fact is that it's unique in the way that they have a lot of land, right? Up above this, they have where the house is. They have this other house that has, I think that garage is closer to the house than closer to the street than the house is, right? And they have a breezeway, that's great, wonderful, right? But you can see it from the road, you can't even see this from the road. I believe it does make it unique, personally. Again, this is my take on it, and my motion.
I'll just say that when the criteria says extraordinary and exceptional conditions, if you look at the map, they are very similar. The lots are very similar. And you can't declare them to be extraordinary and exceptional, because if you say every one is extraordinary and exceptional, they invalidate themselves. Extraordinary and exceptional is something unique. You can't have something that this is unique and that's unique and that's unique.
Okay, let's.
Once you have multiples that match, they're no longer extraordinary and exceptional, and they're no longer unique. So to me, I think the same conditions do apply to other property in the vicinity. And in that regard, I don't think it meets the four conditions.
All right, we'll go with the unique piece. So in that regard, it absolutely is unique in my mind. The reason being is that this house is close enough to the water and the hill. There's no way they're gonna be able to put a garage on the other side. So you have to look at, okay, well, what's the variance? If they cannot get that garage between the house, behind the house, right, which is towards the lake, there's no way they're gonna be able to build it there. So it's a very unique property in that way. Now we have to look at other options, right? There is plenty of room up above in front, but there is none behind it where the variance could be, right? So
the only thing,
looking at just this, it absolutely is unique. You have to look at that lot, then I guess if you're gonna put it in those terms, that is a unique lot then to the rest of them, because you can't get that garage behind it. I don't believe, in looking at the pictures anyway, that you could get that same garage without much modification to that in the house, on the side of the house.
Well, listening to the argument you just made, it's not the lot that becomes unique. It's what they want to do, which is a 2,000 square foot garage. The neighbor next door, if the lots are identical, could say, I'm fine putting a 900 square foot and it will fit. If everything else were identical. The only unique thing then becomes what each owner wants to do. I need a variance. I mean, we see it with pools. I want a pool a certain size. You make it 5 foot smaller, I don't need a variance. But that person says, no, I don't want mine 5 foot smaller. I want this size. Lots the same, setbacks the same, everything's the same. The request is what's unique at that point. So because that person's not willing to give up the 5 feet or whatever, then that makes that situation unique. Therefore, they want a variance. So it's not the lots. And that's what this is based on, the lots.
I would agree.
The
that
lot
you
is very different.
You cannot put this building between the house and the lake. I agree with that.
Right.
But you can't on any of the other lots either. You have to keep in mind, there's a 50-foot buffer there to the lake. So even if a house is a little further back, you still have a 50-foot buffer. And no one is gonna put that building between them and the lake. So I don't question for a minute that this is a fine-looking building that would go on the lot, match just fine. But we have 4 points under the law that apply to everything. It doesn't matter if it's on the lake, it doesn't matter if it's building an accessory structure. In order to grant a variance, it has to pass those 4 points. And I don't see anything in that lot that tells me that it is unique from the other lots in the neighborhood.
Could somebody pull up the topography of that lot? I think,
Once we have a motion and a second, it's only for the board to discuss, so.
all right.
Anyone else?
Did we have a second? I had to get dressed.
Yes, sir, we do have a motion and a second.
Motion was what?
What's that?
To approve.
To approve?
A motion and second to approve, yes, we're just in discussion.
Well, my piece of it is, I know there's a lot of smart people, intelligent people that wrote the zoning rules, and I agree with most of them. But every rule doesn't apply in every situation. Sometimes you have to use logic and common sense. And in my common sense tells me that the logical place to put the building is behind the house like he had on his drawings. That's what I think.
I don't disagree with the logic at all, but in my mind, like we said before, you can't really take into consideration what did the ordinance mean, and honestly, you can't really even take into consideration what is common sense. You kind of got to take into consideration the ordinance that we're given, we have to consider.
Yes, but I
Sometimes
think that
common
our
sense-
role in here is to play the devil's advocate and make logical decisions.
I will say, let me jump in there too real quick. So, although I agree with all that, you know, in particular, again, I guess maybe I threw around the word unique too much, but is there extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property? Yeah, you can't put a garage in between the house and the lake. So there's an exceptional condition with this piece of property. You can't just say that there is some land here.
But it's not.
It's an interpretation piece.
But it's not extraordinary. because
It is
the neighbor
absolutely
has the same-
extraordinary. There's no other way to place this.
I hear what's being said, and I think even if you left off the extraordinary circumstances, not having a garage does not effectively prohibit the use of your property. They have an existing garage. I understand the need, wanting more storage and all of that, but when it comes down to what the zoning ordinance says, what the criteria is for us to vote on, even if you didn't have the extraordinary and exceptional circumstances, I think there's still points on here, and all it takes is for one of them to be a no. And so I think, just based on even those two, that this would not be a good candidate for a variance.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. The motion is for approval of the application. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed? Vote is 3-3, and on a tie vote, motion fails. So we need another motion.
I make a motion to deny the variance as submitted.
And I'll second. Any further discussion?
Again, I'll go back to A. I think it does meet the criteria. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. The conditions that generally don't apply, you know, they say that given the similarness to the other lots, I think when you look at this, there are, the reason it meets this is because these lots were all built at different times. I mean, there's a gentleman or a family or whatever that's just building in their lot next to theirs right now, right? They're all built under different variances, different regulations, different things, and we're trying to come to an agreement, right? That, hey, we're trying to all live here and use our property. I think when you look at the conditions that we're looking at here, I think it meets A and B. D's already given that it meets it. Restricting the utilization of the property, yeah, I think not having a garage there and using the rest of his property for his use, enjoyment, living, whatever they want to do, is part of that. So that's why I think it meets C. I mean, we have to look at this as a group here. I mean, we can't let whether it's extraordinary, exceptional, and you want to get into the semantics of everything, you really got to read into this more than just this A, B, C, and D. I mean, you really do. I would implore with the rest of you that you have to look at this, and does this make good use of this property? If you look at this just from these four that we have to keep up with, I think it meets all of them. I think there's an extraordinary use case on there. If there is somebody over here that has it, that their house was right in the middle, right? And that would be a different use case. It would be a different unique case because yes, they want to have it between them and the road. Okay, maybe they don't want to do that. Maybe we can tell them you have to put it behind the house because you have room. They don't, they can't, it's unique, right? Again, I think when a family comes here and they're trying to get a variance that is very logical, has been well laid out and planned, and you look at these and you actually read these in a little bit more, just like anything, you can probably take anything you want from each one of these questions. But when you look at it and do these criteria or conditions meet, you really have to look at it and read it, right? When you look into it and says, you know, hey, you know, there is a variance here that we're looking at. Is there anything exceptional to this? Look at this particular one, right? You can look at it with all the rest of them. There is particular uniqueness about this lot.
Okay, so to your point,
Yeah.
we can just go to C.
Mm-hmm.
Because of these conditions, the application of this chapter to this particular piece of property would effectively prohibit the unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it does, it sounds, common sense. The human in me says, they want a garage, they're not hurting anybody, you put it there. But look at the criteria we have. So you're saying if they don't get to build this secondary garage
Yeah.
of 2,000 square feet, or it could be 900, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Then they could, that unreasonably restricts the utilization of their property.
Yes. Yeah, and here's why. I don't know if anybody can speak to their HOA. HOAs typically won't have your RV, your boat sitting out there. That's why they have a secondary place for them, correct? If they want, it sounds like they're gonna have young kids. They want a couple extra cars. What happens if they have 4 cars out there and the HOA comes by and goes, you need to get those things put away? Where's he supposed to put them? He's only got so much of a garage. I don't know, was it 2 or 3 car, whatever it was. Let's say they
So
start,
HOA tells you you can't put your own car in your own driveway?
if it's sitting up on the grass, absolutely. HOAs, absolutely. In our HOA, you can't have, if it looks unsightly and there's too many cars in the driveway, they come talk to you. Yeah, each HOA is a little bit differently. So I think you made my point.
But that's not the point. Is his HOA telling him that? If the answer is no, we can't create a fantasy scenario.
I'm explaining to you that the HOAs have these. This is my interpretation of this, knowing about HOAs, right? So would it unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property? I know his HOA isn't gonna let him have an RV sitting out there. If he wants to put it in that garage instead, right? Or if it's a camper,
Well,
or a boat, right?
if I can interject though, that would be
Sure.
his HOA restricting his property further. That wouldn't be the zoning ordinance doing that. So just because the HOA has these requirements, we're not taking into consideration what the HOA requires. We're taking into consideration what the zoning ordinance says. Because a lot of times HOAs do have stricter requirements than a zoning ordinance. But we're looking at it as plainly said, does having an extra detached garage effectively prohibit the use of the property? No. Could the HOA come around and say, well, you can't have this out here, you need to store this somewhere? Sure, but that's not for us to decide. That
Well,
has nothing to do with
You
that.
just made my,
Because what you're saying is, our job would be to help them circumvent their HOA rules.
well,
That's not what
you
we're
made my
here
point,
for.
actually, so thank you, but I'm not circumventing it. So I'm not circumventing it.
You're
right?
giving a scenario by
Okay,
which you want us to consider this.
Sure. So what I'm getting at is that if they have this, then they can put their equipment and/or cars or whatever else in it. If they're not using it, the HOA already said that they could have the garage there, right?
Which is irrelevant
I think,
to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I understand that, but you can't have both.
I think the point is, the house was built 6 years ago, and
The what?
the house was built 6 years ago.
Mhm.
That hasn't been an issue for 6 years, so I don't think it would be an issue now, but
Yeah, well, again, the way I read C, could unreasonably restrict utilization of the property. It doesn't say extraordinary or exceptional. I'm interpreting this, and again, this is what we're here to do, is interpret this and how it would be used and why it would be used and what this would be for. That's how I'm interpreting this. So I think if he's not able to put a garage in, right, and utilize it that way, that it would restrict him using his property. The house is only on a portion of that property. There's a lot of that property that's weeds or grass or trees or whatever else that is just sitting there. I think people should be able to use their property, and in turn, within the C here, If you can't put that on there and we deny it, then you're unreasonably restricting him to do that.
That argument, though, negates the third point, C, for every application. It would, that
We're
is a
not talking
broad
about every
interpretation
application, we're
that
talking
would
about
apply
this
in
one.
every case.
Well, I was trying to go a different route with it, so I kind of switched gears, but the reason I did it was for the first piece. I think that him not having this garage in here, it should be able to be put in here, because I think being able to use his land the way he wants to that way, to be able to use it effectively, to make it look conform with the rest of the neighborhood, is the way it needs to be. So I think it does meet C. That's a personal opinion, again.
I think that
that's why we're having this
was
discussion.
Derek's point in that, last month, we had a swimming pool or a deck or whatever, maybe the same thing, it's like, well, it's an unreasonable restriction if I don't have a swimming pool. It's an unreasonable restriction if I don't have a deck right up to the property line, So
Every person that comes in here feels as though that meets.
I
And
will,
if what you're saying is
Sure.
true, then it's no point of having that.
yeah.
Because everyone who walks in the door feels as though I meet A, B, C,
Let-
and D.
Let me change gears a little bit then. I'm gonna go back to what Bud said, and please join in a little bit. If this was already done by zoning, what is the BZA for? To be honest. I'm
To
still learning.
alleviate, to
Excuse me?
alleviate, and
To
what these four things for is what the Board of Zoning Appeals is for. In a situation where
Say
you
the
have,
first part again, I missed the first part, sorry.
the purpose of the Board of Zoning Appeals is to make rulings on these four decisions as mandated by state law.
Okay.
So our interpretation of whatever these 4 points are, and you can argue that it is extraordinary, or it's not, but that's why we're here. It's not necessarily to take a subjective view. It's to look at these as objectively as we can with the facts that are presented to us by the applicant and by staff.
Okay, so, perfect, that's exactly, and that's what I thought we were here for too. Somebody on the zoning, right, said that does or does not meet these, and we can't just arbitrarily go, I'm just gonna say it doesn't meet it because I agree with them, just because that's what they said already. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to, like Bud said, I'm here to look at this objectively, to understand it, to see if I feel that they meet it or not. I'm not just gonna go off what the zoning says. I may very well agree with them, and I do on most points. On this one, I just happen to not.
If they've gone through every point and said it does or does not meet, then we aren't even needed. That's what I'm saying.
I agree.
What are we even here for?
That's
If they're
exactly
gonna
right.
Go through and say it does not.
I mean, I would agree with you,
So
Lauren.
we are here, as Lauren said, because we are the final say. Our interpretation of these 4 points. Staff gives us their interpretation. We often disagree with it. We often vote in ways that are completely odds to staff. Years ago, in my first few terms here, staff didn't even make recommendations. It was entirely, it is still entirely up to the board, but
Sure.
staff now gives staff's opinion of the application. The board is not bound at all by what staff writes as their interpretation.
So,
But the board does have to apply those 4 conditions, and we've been told by county attorney many times that when you make a motion and you explain the reasoning of your motion, it needs to include the explanation of how it applies to those 4 points. So every person has to look at those 4 points and nothing else. There is not a 5th point, and determine whether or not it applies to all 4. If it fails at one, it might as well fail at all. So with that, we have a motion for denial and a second. Before we vote, is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion to deny, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed? So we seem to have reached an impasse. So I would have to ask, Michael, is there procedurally anything that can we defer until we get an odd number of members?
That is absolutely one of the options. You could defer until the next meeting, presumably the vacancy will be filled by then. That member could review the transcript and review the videotape of the meeting, review the packet, and you could defer the opportunity to vote until that meeting. That runs the risk that that member may not be seated by your next meeting. Hopeful that's the case.
I'm pretty sure, I'm almost certain she will be.
So-
Alternatively, you could remand the application back to staff to see if a reconfigured structure could fit on the lot without the requirement of variances before the board. But your first option certainly has been done in past occasions and would be appropriate here if the board so chose.
So the full board does not need to hear the application again?
The full board would not need to rehear. The public hearing's been noticed, you've conducted the public hearing. It would be up to the newly seated member to affirm at the next meeting that the videotape has been reviewed, the testimony reviewed, the packet reviewed, so that he or she could be in a position to vote when called for the question.
Okay. So after hearing that advice, I'm going to make a motion to defer until the next scheduled meeting. We would say that that would be in December, but I don't know, are we sure we're having a December meeting?
I mean, we have one on the books that y'all approved for the calendar last year. This will be the only item, though, on the agenda. We don't have any new cases.
But there is a time period to render the decision, is there not?
That's correct. I want to say, I think it's what, 60 days? Yeah, to render a decision within 60 days. So that would put you, well within it, because it's the second Thursday in December.
May I ask a question? May I ask a question? If the meeting is deferred and that allows for the new member to review the video, review the packet, and come to their conclusion, is there opportunity to have a discussion as the board and answer questions that
We
person may have?
would need a new motion at that
Yes.
time, so then there would be a following discussion
Okay.
after the motion.
So would the applicants return and the new member could ask them questions if they need to?
Well, I believe the public hearing had been closed, and it would just simply be debate for staff and the board.
So it would be
Okay.
a discussion between the board and staff in December?
If there are any questions directed to staff, presumably, but a discussion amongst the board would be the principal discussion for that day.
Okay, so I have made a motion to defer to the next scheduled meeting, which should be December. And we need a second?
A second.
Second? Any discussion of the deferment? All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Any opposed? That motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the 2025 calendar. I think that's just informational, or we don't need a motion on the calendar, do we?
Y'all have to vote on it,
Okay.
that you accept it or not.
So do you have a motion to accept the calendar as printed?
I make a motion to accept the proposed 2025 calendar as printed.
I second it.
A motion and a second, any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Any opposed? Motion passes. No other items on the agenda, so we need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second. All those in favor? All right, motion passes. We are adjourned.